Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network, brought to you by Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. I am Braden Gall. That is Emma Lingen. Good morning, Emma. Good afternoon. I do that every single time. It just feels like morning. Good afternoon, Emma.
Good afternoon. It does feel like morning. Well, it kind of feels like night because we haven't seen the sun all day, but no.
It's
Good
dreary. Don't the clocks go back this weekend?
Yeah, this weekend, fall
Yeah.
back.
I don't love getting up it's 7:15 and it being still dark and being like, oh crap, we got to get the kids to school. I don't love that. Speaking for a friend, of course. Don't love that, but I'm not ready for 4:45 darkness either.
I know.
Not fun.
Well, I feel like it's weird where we are on the time zone map too.
Yeah.
Like it just everything is messed up here.
We are on as far into the central time zone. Like we are at the far eastern edge of the central time zone. So it definitely is very different than like Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Exactly right. All right. Today on the show, I will attempt, and you will attempt, we will attempt to talk about something positive. What players are making progress? Question mark, if any, question mark, ... All of that coming. We'll do that a little bit later on in the show. I do want to ask you about Utah, first place Utah and Chicago. Adam and I talked a little bit about this on the subscriber pod at the Lower Broad Hockey. Please go subscribe, Lower Broad Hockey. And obviously we'll discuss sort of what they're doing and how long it's taken them to get to where they are, finally making progress for Chicago. I think the progress that we kind of expected, maybe not this good, but some progress that we expected for Utah, although I think they lost last night. We'll get into that. One of the worst, I'm not trying to be super dramatic about this and be prisoner of the moment, but that was one of the sloppiest hockey games I've ever seen at Bridgestone Arena. And so we do have to discuss what happened. We'll take a look at the 10 games start to last year and the 10 game start to this year, kind of compare and contrast. Where are they? There are actual signs of progress. Obviously the record was better, but I want to get your thoughts on where they're at. And that ultimately leads us to decisions about the future for a lot of different people inside the organization, and how close are we to needing to make decisions on some of these folks. Great to see so many of you in the comments. Kevin, Explore, Jeff, Lop, all you guys, good to see all of you. If you want to ask questions, you can help steer the conversation. We'd love to take your questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please thumbs up, like the product, notifications turned on, share it, tell somebody that we're live, and that's how people find us and how we can kind of grow the audience and everything. So we do appreciate you guys for doing that. Sinkers Beverages, 5-time Liquor Store of the Year. They are the 5-time defending champion, as voted on by all of you, the Nashvillians. That's pretty impressive stuff. It's as many years as it takes to suck to get good in the NHL. You need 5 bad years, as good as Sinkers is. I'm going to shoehorn this whole thing in, Emma. As bad, I'm into it now. I can't.
You're doing great. I believe in you.
I can't quit now. You need 5 bad years to get good at hockey. Sinkers has been great for that long, so that's the best I can do. That's the best I can do. I did come back from my trip though, and all of a sudden be like, I drink wine now, and so we went to Sinkers, and my wife and I were like, give us a nice light red, and we picked out some wine, and now we have some wine in the beverage fridge, which we never really do, and now we do thanks to Sinkers and a trip overseas. So Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. And some news. There'll be some news, I think, around Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So just stay tuned. Stay tuned to all of the great shows across the 440 Sports Network. All right. You guys have already asked a bunch of questions. What blackmail does Brunette have on Trotz? All right. That's funny. Kevin, catching it from the jump today. Good to see you. Of course, we need the sun the way the Preds need a goal. That's absolutely correct, Jeff. What is up? That's got to be like old Budweiser commercial, which, by the way, I think you can buy at Sinkers Beverages. Let's see here. Yeah, here you go. We need that same one more. You can't use the same joke twice. Come on, man. Can we just blank this season, get to the draft, get our 5th place lottery pick? Sorry, I'm still ill after last night, says Peanut and Jeff. Look, here's the deal. Let's start with last night first, and then we'll get into the 10 games, and then we'll get into the bright spots. Because I agree with you. Lop Stasny is, I think, one of the few bright spots. So there was a moment, I just want to there are too many moments to pick out that were frustrating from the game, Emma. But there was a moment where I want to say it was about 7 minutes to go in the second period, maybe a little bit more than that, like maybe 7.5. And it was like on the heels of like 4 or 5 straight mistakes by the Preds that this whole entire thing stood out to me. I think it was Stamkos driving into the offensive zone and then like bouncing the puck off the boards to no one, like an 8-year-old does in hockey. Then there was like Brady Shea wheeling around the net and falling down. Then there was like Forsberg. The pass goes right to Forsberg's stick, and he like tries to hit it, and it just like whiffs on it. And it turned all of these result in turnovers that end up Tampa getting the puck and kind of diving into the zone and creating offense. And then there was another one. I can't even remember who it was. There was another one. And then in the ensuing offensive possession, Tampa Bay completely whiffs on 2 passes, and they connect despite the fact that they weren't even like they missed the puck. And the result was a legitimate scoring chance, granted kind of below the dot on the left side of Saros, but puts it right on frame. Saros has to make a good save. And I'm going, the Lightning are screwing up their passes, and it creates scoring chances. And meanwhile, future Hall of Famers cannot handle the puck. And I know it was just a bad game, but that's what Roman Josi said after the game a couple of games ago, where he was like, "Oh, just a bad game." It was one of the sloppiest, most disappointing puck handling hockey skill games I have ever seen at Bridgestone Arena. Am I being too harsh?
No, I mean, it was horrible. And I think, talking about what Yossi was saying after, I think it was the Anaheim game, I didn't think it was going to get worse than that. And it did. And to your point, I think Tampa, no disrespect, did not have their best game either. But I think so. I mean, looking at those 2 rosters, there was a clear divide. I mean, Tampa was the better team on paper, but I think when you look at all the circumstances around it, I mean, Tampa didn't have their best game. They were struggling coming into this. Vasilevsky has had a rough start to the year. This was a winnable game for Nashville. UC Saros did everything and then some to keep them remotely in this game. And I mean, it could have easily, and I'm not exaggerating, it could have been 10-0 at the end of the first period if it wasn't for Saros keeping them in it. And so I think that looking at just, like you said, it was fundamentals. It was just mistakes, mental mistakes, yes, but also the sloppy penalties. I mean, Andrew Brunette called Eric Halla's ass out at the end after the game. He said very explicitly, I think Halla's taking too many penalties. And to which I say,
you think?
To which I say, you're not wrong, but if we're going to be calling guys out individually, let's maybe throw some others in there too. Like, I don't know, Stamkos or Willsby. I mean, Willsby ended up getting hurt, but I mean, it was so bad. I mean, you can't get into a rhythm offensively as a team when you're constantly in the penalty box and you're constantly killing penalties. And people are complaining about, it's low-hanging fruit. I think people complain, well, why are guys like Michael McCarron and Cole Smith getting so much ice time? Well, because those are your 2 best penalty killers, and they have to spend a lot of time on the ice.
They're also the only 2 guys that appear to be driving offense in the offensive zone.
Yes, exactly. So it really, I mean, and by the time they did find some glimmer of offense against Tampa in the third period, it was far too late.
Which even then was a it was a nice play by Evangelista, but it was still just a deflection. Like, it was still just a...
Evangelista, I know he finished with 2 points on the night. Forsberg finished with a goal too. Both of those guys, on the whole, had very bad games overall. So I think it's just, it's just really... It was very hard to watch. It was very, very hard to watch.
This was posted in the chat, and by the way, completely apoplectic in the chat during the game, which I don't blame y'all, man. I really don't. Like it. Like the jokes have gotten better as the team has gotten worse. honestly, I think this was at 5-on-5 XG, for and against, and Evangelista, Stasny, and Shea, according to this, which I'm blaming you, Kevin, if this is incorrect, but you're the one who posted it, Kevin. Good to see you in there. Evangelista, Shea, and Stasny were actually the 3 highest offensive producing players, and I'm not sure a single one of their XGs was above a single Tampa Bay Lightning player. And again, that's not the end all be all, but the word that keeps coming to mind thinking about how they tried to score goals, the point of the game, was impotent. They were completely impotent. They couldn't get out of their own zone. They couldn't complete passes. They couldn't set up shop on offense. They couldn't generate anything. And meanwhile, Tampa is not a good offensive team. And they'll do the same thing, come down the other ice, make a couple of passes, and create an opportunity for themselves to at least challenge Saros. And he was great. UC Saros was outstanding. But
He was.
I don't know, watching and it's one thing to watch, if Svechkov makes a mistake, or if Evangelista even makes a mistake, or Stasny. Stasny made a couple of big mistakes last night. And I can't believe I'm going to say positive things about Barron, but we'll do that in a second. But watching Philip Forsberg make mistakes that I have not seen him make in 10 years, I know you got to flush it and move on, but man, it was troubling to watch.
But here's what's worth pointing out, though. I'm with you. If we're going to watch bad hockey, and last night was bad hockey, I'd rather watch Svechkov play bad hockey.
Yeah.
He's out there healthy scratch for a second straight game. And now listen, I'm not here arguing that he had a great start to the season. Why are you benching him? I get it. But if the result is going to be what we saw last night, you might as well put him back in there, because it's worse watching, like you said, future Hall of Famers go out there and completely embarrass themselves. And I mean, all of these guys, it was just bad. Even the guys who scored, like I said, had bad games. And, Stasny has been a fantastic positive to start the year. But I mean, like you said, even he had some big mistakes. But again, get in line. Who didn't make mistakes last night? But
yeah,
it
was fugly.
Yeah.
All right. I do have a question here. So Kevin says Brady Shea falls down drink. Lop says, I'm so over Brady Shea. Lop says Shea equals Turris. And then here's an interesting one from Josh that we're going to get to. I think this is a big part of the conversation, which is the coach question is now about whether or not he is helping the young players grow. If he isn't developing the young players, he needs to go. Now, that will be a conversation I'm going to ask you in just a second. I want to go to the Shea thing, because I think ultimately that's an avenue sort of into the Brunette conversation. I feel like Brady Shea might be, I don't know what the right word, like the cutout or the avatar for the entire story, because he's not young. He's kind of in his prime. He's been much better other places, but he's not really a piece you can move. Like you can maybe move Stamkos. I think you can probably find a team that wants a guy with his skill on the power play and if you're willing to give him up cheap, they eat most of the salary. I think you can do that. I think Ryan O'Reilly and Michael McCarron are going to be legitimate assets, because people need centers, as they said on the broadcast, and both those guys have done well. The two guys that look like they're playing hardest are Michael McCarron and Ryan O'Reilly most nights. But Shea, to me, kind of represents the problems that they are in. And it also might represent the solution, but I'm not sure about this. And that is, if you are going to start talking about changing the coach, I think it has to be like the Brady Shea test, because he's not this bad of a player. He's just not. And so at some point, when Forsberg looks like the player he looks like, because he's not that bad of a player, right? That's not Philip Forsberg last night. At some point, Shea's the one you can't really move. You still have a long time to commit to him. He's still much better than what he's showing you, and he's still young enough to have good years ahead of him. That's the guy that probably, the thing I keep thinking of, Emma, is that's the guy that probably benefits the most from a change. That kind of player. And to me, I'm not ready to throw Brady Shea out with the bathwater here, the Brady out with the bathwater. If they're going to make a change, and I don't see why the trajectory they're on wouldn't lead to that at some point, whether it's his fault or not, I think Brady Shea is kind of the representation of the issue here. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like he's kind of the piece that describes the position that this team is in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. But I think, too, like you said, it doesn't mean it all falls on him. I think also you look at the job that Andrew Brunette was hired for originally, and then the job that he has now. Two very different job descriptions, rather. And so I think that Barry Trotz got him into this situation. And so that's why Barry Trotz is remaining faithful to Brunette. He's remaining, kind of giving him this good faith. Hey, I didn't really do you a solid last year, but so we'll give you some time to fix it. And I think that is going to be his continuing thought process here until ownership or something steps in and demands that a change be made. I don't see a coaching change happening, at least not in the immediate future. I think people were like, we need to fire him now. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And I honestly think bringing up Brady Shea is a good point, because a lot of people have been really, and understandably, have been really focused on Stamkos. Stamkos isn't a fit for this system. He's not producing. That's all true. But people are, kind of hyper fixating on, well, if Barry Trotz has to make a choice between Brunette or Stamkos, he's probably going to choose Brunette. And you know what? I don't think that would be the wrong choice at all for the future of this team. If that's the choice you're making between those two guys, Andrew Brunette is going to help this team a lot farther in the future than Steven Stamkos is as a 35-year-old at the end of his career. So I think that is a little bit more cut and dry. But you bring up an interesting point with Brady Shea. I mean, Brady Shea is so much better than what he has been for the last year and 11 games. I mean, that we've seen from him. He is so much better. And I say this as someone who watched him for several years in Carolina. Again, he is not 35. He's 31.
I think he's 30.
31. Yeah. So like you said, he's young enough to still have good years ahead of him.
It's 31. Yeah. Sorry.
So I just think that is the tough one. That's the one that people weren't happy with from the beginning because they didn't like the term of his contract, but that's the price of doing business.
It's fun. That's so funny because that's the one I like the most.
I know.
Because of the player he was in the past. And this is why I think he's the representation. Not, to your point, he is not the thing that's causing problems here. I mean, he's one of them. They're all doing it. But I feel like he's the representation of where this organization is. Because if he is better than what we've seen, and we've seen it for 8 years previously, it's not like it was one good season. It was a lot of good seasons where he's been far better than the player we've seen over the last, let's say 90, I guess it's 93 games. Played every game last year, by the way. He can be a valuable piece of the team moving forward. But the only explanation is that the system doesn't work or that the coach isn't doing his job. If we believe that Brady Shea is better than this, and if you all believe that he's not, and he's washed or cooked or whatever, like Stamkos or like Turris was, that's a different conversation. But I don't think you can look at his career body of work and just say oh, he's terrible. Well, right. That's not the player he's been. What's the common denominator here? It's Andrew Brunette and the system not maximizing players. And then to go one step further, they did maximize players the year before that. So I understand why people are every piece of smart data has contradicted by another piece of smart data, and it all works together to create this, complete mess of a hockey team right now.
Yeah, and I think it's honestly worth pointing out, not that I'm comparing the two, but I think that you look at, for example, Nick Perbix, I think has been one of the bright spots for this team this year. I think Nick Perbix has been fantastic. Now, worth noting, Perbix is very much, comes as advertised. He is a shutdown defenseman. No one's expecting him to generate offense. Meanwhile, he has more goals than Steven Stamkos does this year. But everyone, you're kind of bringing him in, what role he's going to play. That he's going to be, the shutdown defenseman, and he's going to be a steady presence on the blue line. And I think that he's done that very effectively, both at 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill. The problem is with Shea, it just feels like they haven't given him a role. Like, they don't know, are you trying to get him to be more offensive? Are you trying to make him more dynamic? Or do you want him to be that shutdown defenseman? Because in the brief time that he's been here, he's kind of been asked to do both. And when you watch him out there, it's a little unclear. Like, I thought, honestly, when Perbix came in, I thought that would be a good thing for Shea. I thought that would really help define what his role was, because if you put him next to Perbix, okay, well, Perbix is going to be the meat and potatoes, really shut down, stay at home defenseman, kind of frees Shea up to go do his thing. But now it's like, it just feels like he doesn't have a direction. And it is hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And what makes it so hard to watch is knowing that this is not the player he is. And I know a lot of people are already, they're ready to say, oh, he's cooked, he's washed, whatever. I truly don't believe that.
I can be convinced. Kevin says, look, I looked at Shea's stats last night. His last year in Carolina started to decline, continuing trend now. It's hard to separate that from all the other context that we're discussing, because, like, for example, Explorer says, we've seen these players now play for 90 games. This is coaching. Well, you can't just throw out the previous 82 before that, because there's a lot of guys that had career years before that. Not sure where any of the confusion is. Normal franchises would have moved on. The leash Bruno has is only due to low expectations. Nash Atlanta, good to see all you guys. The leash also has to do with Trotz admitting that he messed up royally. I'd like a coaching change, but I'll never be convinced Bruno is bad on his own, but he's bad for this team. And that raises the question that we were kind of bringing up, and I think Keaton says it best here, which is it's both coach and roster construction. NHL teams live and die based on what they have at center. Guys over the age of 30 are rarely difference makers, and the ones that are Crosby and Ovechkin. And I think ultimately that's what I was asking with Adam on our subscriber pod, which is, if you truly believe that Andrew Brunette, when you hired him, was to usher in and develop young players, which is kind of what you did the first year, you brought in a few like cheap veterans, which, by the way, are now looking like fantastic contracts. All the ones that you and me and Adam all laughed about. Luke Shen, Gus Nyquist, and Ryan O'Reilly, three of the best contracts that Barry Trotz has handed out, relative to the following summer, of course. They had a plan that year, and they maximized a bunch of players. They maximized guys like Kiefer Sherwood, and they maximized guys. And that was Brunette kind of doing the job he was hired to do, which is take a franchise in transition, develop young pieces, and give them some direction or identity. And if Trotz is not willing to admit that the second year was the mistake, you can chase good money with bad money here if you want to, or chase, I guess, bad money with bad money if you fire him. But I don't believe that all of a sudden that fixes a bunch of 33, 34, 35-year-olds. So maybe it does. Maybe I just am missing that, and maybe it does. But you can't do it. You can't change everybody else. Short of a total sell-off where you've got Bunting and Holla and McCarron and O'Reilly and Barron, who, I can't believe I'm saying this, I thought played one of his better hockey games last night, relative to, expectation. I don't know how you change all the other stuff if you're going to keep Bruno intact, unless you do, God's work to get rid of half the roster, and not because they're bad guys, but because it's not working.
Yeah, I think, again, I've said this numerous times before, but that 18-game point streak 2 years ago is the worst thing that could have happened to this team. Because, as you said, that was the result of Andrew Brunette doing the job he was hired to do. And so even that year, that trade deadline, when they bring in guys like, I'm totally blanking now. God, he's
Zucker, Jason Zucker, and Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah, guys like that who were on expiring contracts, like, that was fine for that trade deadline.
Sure.
He didn't go crazy. He didn't go add a bunch of crazy expensive pieces because it was clear, like, okay, we're a playoff team now, but this is just the beginning. We're just getting our feet wet here. And so all of that, it was like, all right, okay. And then you get to the next summer, which obviously was when Stamkos, Shea, Marchessault were all brought in. And I think that, as you said, that was the mistake. It's supplementing your young talent with the wrong veterans. Barry Trotz picked the wrong veterans, particularly in the case of Stamkos, I think. And so,
Marchessault plays hard, but it's not like he's been a hugely net positive influence on and off the ice for the organization. So
no, but I think Marchessault at least is more capable of playing the style of hockey that Andrew Brunette wants this team to play. So
no question.
I just think that it does come down to Barry Trotz admitting that he was wrong. And I think that right now we're seeing that in the fact that Andrew Brunette has a job still, because Barry Trotz is saying, hey, my bad. Like, I'm not going to fire you because this is kind of on me. But I think overall, after that, what I mean by saying that is why Brunette's not going anywhere anytime in the immediate future. If you're expecting him to be fired like before Christmas, it's not going to happen. But I think that, if this goes on much longer, I think that it's just, I mean, it does get to a point where it is it's not all Brunette's fault, but that's going to be the easiest solution.
Right. It's the easiest fix. That's for sure. Josh says, I've seen them mention the changes that the team has made and seems to have improved their play on the ice, but is there real examples of those changes? I haven't seen any ability to elevate or maximize the players, which brings us to sort of the next conversation, which is statistically, where are they actually relative to last year, which is technically a little bit better. Not by much, but they are a little bit better. The power play, of course, scoring a goal in garbage time, I guess I could call it, if you want to call it that, in the third period yesterday. The power play is still atrocious, much worse. They are more efficient with their chances in the slot. If you look at the sort of the fancy stats, they are slightly better in expected goals for than they were last year. I assume that number went down after these numbers were before last night when Adam and I broke it all down. Basically, the fancy numbers, if you look at scoring chances and shots on net and offensive zone time and expected goals for and everything with the offense, they are just the process seems to be slightly better, that they are getting to their places, that they are getting shots, they are putting the shots on net. It's not necessarily translating to a lot more scoring, obviously, and then the power play being much worse is hurting these numbers. But at the end of the day, their process seems to be slightly better. The defense is where Brunette is apparently concerned, although I thought the defense was better, I guess, last night for most of the day. Saros is doing a lot of heavy lifting on that side of the ice. But it does lead to sort of like, what changes are you actually seeing? And I think up until last night, I think, Emma, I could argue it looked incremental. But the one thing I'll say is the team is in games most of the time, other than the Anaheim game, the Toronto game, and then last night. Most of their first 10 games, close hockey games, dramatic third periods. That's entertainment value. Like, I'd much rather watch a team that's fighting 60 minutes, that's playing in close games and losing than a team than I saw last night, which didn't look like professional hockey players by and large. And so up until last night, I kind of felt like, okay, I think a slightly better record is an indicator of where this team is. They are slightly better. Is that good enough for the fans? Is that good enough for Brunette to keep his job? I don't know. I can ask you about that later. But that's how I felt about the team. They were slightly better, process slightly better. And then last night happened, and I feel like I am right back watching last year's team, that they haven't made any progress. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think that's what's hard. I mean, last night was a bad hockey game, and I'm with you. I think that they were slightly better up until that point. And normally we say, or I would say, it's one game, it's a long season, there are 82 of these things, like, you're gonna get some stinkers here and there, it's gonna happen. But it's really hard to keep that perspective after what we saw last season. And so I think that's why last night feels as bad as it does, because it's like, oh God, they're already right back to where they were last year. I think, trying to keep some perspective on it, I do think that, again, defensively, they're much better than they were last year. Although, as you said, Andrew Brunette seems to think that's the problem. To which I say, how do you feel about the fact that you've only scored 2 goals or fewer in 8 of your last 11 games? Like, I don't know that
leading the
there.
leading the NHL in that category, by the way.
Yeah. Or trailing, if you depending on how you look at it, just bringing up the rear in that category. The power play is terrible. It's terrible.
It's
And not
so
just,
bad.
it's not even just like the results, because the stats don't always tell you everything. You could be generating some really good chances and just not finishing, and that's why your power play isn't good or doesn't rank highly within the league. But I mean, if you watch this power play, good Lord. I mean, it's just so bad. And so those are the things that Andrew Brunette, that was supposed to be like his bread and butter. The thing that he's really good at is like getting this high octane offense, this really fast pace, just like smothering teams with the power play. And I think that he was able to do that in places like Florida, places like New Jersey, because of the players that he had. And I just keep coming back to, he doesn't have the right players for the system that he's trying to run. And now that's not necessarily his fault. Like, it's not, and it's not to say that this is a group of bad players or Brunette's a bad coach, but they are a bad fit for each other. And that it just feels like you're still trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here, and it's just not going well.
I would give anything to know in the moment, because I want to be honest here about my own feelings, and most everybody listening, very few of you, I think even you would be included in this too with me, were on July 2nd of 2 summers ago, came on this show and said this is a terrible decision. They should not have signed Stamkos. They should not have signed Marchessault, Conn Smythe winner. They should not have signed Brady Shea. Oh, I can't believe they traded Ryan McDonough. Should have kept him around. Like, nobody, almost everybody. I mean, Adam kind of hinted at like, oh, I don't know if Stamkos fits the system. I need receipts. And I'm not saying some of you didn't do that, but the vast majority of people, I remember talking to the players, how excited they were about the whole thing. I remember you and I doing shows, how excited we all were for what this thing could look like. And so I want to know, what did Andrew Brunette say in those meetings when Barry Trotz says, hey, I think I'm going to sign Steven Stamkos? Did Andrew Brunette think this is going to be great? Or did he have concerns? Like, again, this is all a hypothetical here, but I would love to know, in a moment of honesty, what did he really think? Because it shouldn't be all just Barry Trotz making those decisions. If you're like, hey, I'm going to overhaul your roster, spend $100 million, and not take your opinion into account, that's malpractice by the general manager, in my opinion, even if it is his final say.
Fair, but I will say, in Brunette's defense, again, I wasn't there, but if I'm Andrew Brunette and I'm a power play guy, I oversee the power play, and you're telling me that you're going to get one of the best power play specialists in the history of the game in Steven Stamkos, that's probably what I'm focusing on. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'm not,
I know.
I just think that, I highly doubt that Brunette was going to be like, oh, don't give me that guy. Like, I just think that it's, at the time, we all thought it was good. We thought we had some questions. People didn't like the Shea contract, or some people were upset about McDonough leaving. I just think that on the whole, as you said, no one, I mean, not no one, but none of us were coming here after, like, a couple days later, like, well, that was terrible.
Right. Because I remember us doing that after the Nyquist, Shen, O'Reilly flurry, and we all kind of got on here and was like, what exactly is he doing?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, that's terrible. It was like, I don't know about this. And so I just remember a distinct sort of feeling towards the signings 2 years ago versus last year, and the opposite of them, and the opposite feeling is the actual reality for both of those strategies, which I find to be super interesting. So ultimately, you said don't expect any changes soon. I don't know what the first one would be if it's on the roster. I do think Ryan O'Reilly, you could trade him anytime you want. If you wanted to trade Ryan O'Reilly and get a pretty good return for him, I think you get a pretty high draft pick and probably a pretty nice prospect for Ryan O'Reilly. That is a trade asset right now. And frankly, I'm glad Barry Trotz did not trade him last year. So now you've got that trade chip here. I think Michael McCarron is worth something. I think Michael Bunting is worth something. I don't know about any of the other one-year guys, Cole Smith or Justin Barron or whoever else. There are a few others, Holla. I don't know how much you get in return for those guys. So they could start that process early. They're not going to, because they're still right around 500. And as long as they're kind of around 500, they're going to kind of stay the course. When is the you're saying Christmas? You said Thanksgiving in the preseason, and I said Christmas. I think we're both kind of around those. If they are one game under 500 and in 6th place in the division, which is where I think they're at right now, if they are there, at what time do we see a change with the head coach? Or never? Or is he's going to be one game under 500 on the final day of the season and be still the head coach?
I think as long as they are sniffing 500, Andrew Brunette keeps his job this season, throughout the season. I'm not saying that's the right choice, or I agree with it. I just think that as long as they are around that, like, quite honestly, even if they're not, I just don't see a world where Andrew Brunette gets fired midseason. Even if they're just bad again, like they were last year. I just don't see it. And again, I think that is a lot of Barry Trotz wanting to do, do right by his guy, make it a good faith move. Like, hey, I kind of screwed things up for you last year, whatever. But I think that I don't see him getting fired mid-season, regardless of how the team is doing. I think that maybe it's a conversation that happens after the season. I could see a world where they move on from him next offseason, but I don't see it happening in the middle of the year, because a big part of that too is that you're not just going to fire a coach and not have a plan. And I think that, who would you replace him with? I've seen people asking about Pete DeBoer, and I'm just going to go on this tangent right now. So Pete DeBoer, people are like, well, I mean, he threw his goalie under the bus in the playoffs, but like, is he really that bad? Yes, he's really that bad. Believe me when I say players do not like playing for this guy. They do not respect him. They don't respect his work ethic. And there's a reason that his act wears thin after a year or two in every place he's gone, because players start tuning him out. He is like Laviolette, but worse. I mean, he just, seriously, just believe me when I say I've talked to a lot of people who would know.
I got you.
And I think that if you're looking for a team that's in the situation that Nashville is in right now, you need someone who's going to galvanize that group. And Pete DeBoer could not be a worse choice for that. So
unless you're trying to galvanize your kids against you as the parent, like I need my daughters to be unified in their frustration with dad. So therefore they go out and do the job they're supposed to. Honestly, what I think of when I think of Pete DeBoer is I think of like fixing sort of like the demeanor, because I can't tell if they're tuning Andrew Brunette out, but he is such kind of a relaxed, kind of laid back, at least that's how he presents outwardly. That was the concern. I think Marchessault is such a fiery personality. I think that's why he doesn't mesh necessarily, but that's just this is sort of alleged. This is like the speculation here on my part. I could see 2 years of just like military drill sergeant jerkwad Pete DeBoer being the head coach to get everybody pissed off at playing hockey but focused. And then you're like, okay, he's gone. Now we bring in the Galvin as the nice guy, and everybody's ready to compete at that time.
But a very important piece of this entire thing is DeBoer or whoever has to want this job.
You're right.
Can you think of an NHL coach who would want this job right now?
Well, they're only 30. They're only 30, 32, 32. There are only 30 of these jobs in the world. So people will take them when they're available. Here's a couple questions here. Explore says, is this team closer to rebuild or a championship? Given the answer, what's the logical direction the franchise should take? And I think that is ultimately the question about Brunette. Is he the right guy for the young players? Because Svechkov's not better. Matthew Wood occasionally has moments of like he looks like he belongs, but like he's kind of just out there. The Brady Martin thing was what it was. He was just up here for a taste and to go back to get better. Everybody seems to do better in Milwaukee with their development than they do up here. And that's an indictment of the coach who was supposed to be good at that part of the game. So I think the answer is clearly rebuild versus championship, where are they closer to? I mean, they're on the doorstep of a rebuild. They're nowhere close to a championship. And to me, that then means the question is Andrew Brunette the right guy to bring all these young kids together and try to make a championship team out of them the way we're seeing in Utah right now?
Yeah, I do think that this team is closer to a rebuild than they are to a championship. I don't think Barry Trotz is ready to admit that. And when it comes to Brunette, whether he's the right guy, it's really hard to say because we've seen, like you said, Svechkov hasn't gotten better. Okay. Novak didn't get better. I think Evangelista's gotten slightly better. I think Stastny has gotten better. I think Wood looks great. I think that
Ozzy Weisblatt looks very good.
Ozzy Weisblatt looks great. He looks great. I will say that I think Willsby is a weird one to me because he actually had a very good start to the season. His first couple games, he looked really, really good. The last few games until he got hurt last night,
I don't think he was sort of promoted beyond the point of competency because of the injury, right, to Haig to some degree. He's not really a first-line defenseman. Like,
I mean, the way he was playing, he didn't even look like a seventh defenseman the last few games. So I'm just saying, like, it hasn't been linear for these young players, but I think that is less on the coach. I think it just, development is not always going to be linear for these players. And I think that we did see, go back to 2 seasons ago, Brunette's first season, to your earlier point about he's maximizing talent. He's maximizing these underperforming players that he had. So I think that if you get him the right roster, he can be the right guy. But, saying, is he the right guy for this team? Well, right now, we don't know what this team is. And that's the problem. Yeah. That's the biggest problem. So it's really hard to make a judgment call on Brunette and whether he's the right guy for the group because the group still doesn't have an identity. And that goes back to the whole question, well, are they rebuilding or are they close to a championship? And that in itself is pretty telling that we're having to ask that.
Mitch says, what are the real options if Brunette is fired? Carl Taylor would put Trotz in a make-or-break situation. Richardson was rough in Chicago. Lavi, Torts, DeBoer are your only true options. I disagree. I think it's interim or audition for Taylor. And I think they've shown us over the last few years that they're just not interested in Carl Taylor being the head coach of the Nashville Predators. He's had so many opportunities, and he's not really even been a finalist. I think Carl Taylor is doing really good work. That might be where he is best suited. He said on the record to me before, I want to be a head coach in the NHL. So something has to kind of give with Carl in Milwaukee. We'll find out. I don't know exactly, how that works out. So
the other names, Tortorella, Laviolette, DeBoer, those guys don't want this job. They don't want this job because they are not a coach. They are not coaches for developing teams. That's not their jam. That's literally why Tortorella left Philadelphia.
Well, talk about not wanting to be around a personality type.
That too. But I think that, it's not just like, all right, well, bring in the next one. It's like, well, no, you have to think about the fit. And honestly, I think on paper, Brunette is a better fit than any of those guys.
Well, but
So
sometimes you do just need the change of voice, and the change is the question is the system the problem? That's the question here. It's not about like, and I think we were talking. There's some folks in the comments talking earlier about like, oh, he's probably a good coach, but he's not a great head coach. He might have a really smart system, be a really good assistant coach, but that's the best place for him. We just don't know. Josh says there's really no rush to fire in season as far as getting to the next guy goes. So to me, it's about developing the young players, and that's ultimately where I'm at with this. It's only a matter of time if they keep playing like this that they're going to have to start selling pieces, because that's the smart thing to do. And so as you're doing that, the only question that should matter is, how do I get the most out of the future starters that we already have on the team? And we all know who the list is. And so if he's not the right guy with this system to maximize their growth and development over the last 40 or 50 games, let's say, when they start to sell, then you do need to make a change and admit that you did something wrong and that you didn't help him out with your decisions, Barry Trotz. And that's on him. That's on Trotz. But if he is the right guy to develop these young players, then I need to see some examples of it. Evangelista's been good. I actually think Barron is slightly better, and I think Stasny is better. I think Stasny's better because of Stasny. Because Spencer Stasny had a very unique situation last training camp. He went on his own journey to fix some of those things and address some of those. Like, that's not Andrew Brunette's system developing Spencer Stasny. That is him going through a dramatic life alteration.
And Stasny, I don't know if you've noticed, has bulked up quite a bit. Like, he came in looking physically very different this year than he did last year. I think a lot of that has to do, as you said, that's on Stasny. It's better. He's better for his own work that he's put into it. But I think that, again, looking at, is Brunette the right guy to develop these players? You need to see examples. I hear that. What I also hear a lot of is people saying, well, if he's supposed to develop young players, why'd you get rid of Cody Glass, Phil Tomasino, and Tommy Novak? First of all, Tommy Novak was not that young. He's like 27. But like all these other guys that,
they tried. Those guys had their turn. They had a year and a half, 2 years. They had their chance.
I hear that, but people are saying, well, these guys, these are the kids that like Bruno should have been brought in to develop. I'm sorry, but take a look around the league. None of these guys have popped off with any kind of like sustained success since they left Nashville. So
yeah, I think that's I think that's kind of a false flag there. Like, I think that's kind of a waste. Like, to me, it's like they have a lot of first round talent in their system right now, either in the starting lineup or close to it. And as you trade pieces away, the more minutes are going to be available for those pieces, those young pieces.
Which comes back to the earlier point of, if we're going to see bad hockey, it might as well be bad hockey from Fedor Svechkov.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I don't need to watch. And this is all kind of be bearing down on guys like Shea and Stamkos and Marshall Show and Forsberg, and that's heavy as the head because of the contracts and the careers and everything. But like, I Forsberg getting in a fight tells you all you need to know about his frustration level. And I think again, as they begin to sell off pieces, the younger players will begin to take slots and minutes. And at that moment, if someone else is better suited to maximize their growth and progress, you have to make a change, period. That's it. And until then, I'm willing to listen to your argument that Andrew Brunette's best for that. He maximized a bunch of guys 2 years ago. Good argument. I haven't seen the argument, the data, the facts that back up that argument today. Again, you want to point to Evangelista? Ironically, the guy who missed all of training camp is the one who's better. You certainly didn't develop him during training camp. Stasny, the guy who wasn't available for all of most of last season, is worked on his own journey, and now he's better. Like, you haven't done anything that I can see. I think Wood's got there's lots of guys I like. Matthew Wood and Weisblatt, and I like all the prospects in Milwaukee and Molendyke and Ufko and everybody else. All exciting. I haven't seen anybody that Andrew Brunette got his hands on and turned into a real player. I haven't seen that yet.
Unless you're going to count guys like Kiefer Sherwood, which, like,
Good job.
Yeah. Cool. But you turned him into an asset for another team. Like, that's what a rebuilding team does. That's what a rebuilding organization does. So if we want to go there, that's just kind of where you're at.
Sinkers Beverages, everybody. You need something to drink, Sinkers Beverages has you covered. You'd want to forget about what you saw at Bridgestone Arena last night? Sinkers Beverages has you covered. Do you want to eat your feelings? Shotgun Willie's has you covered. Again, what's really interesting about the Brunette thing is that, like, at the end of the day, he might be the right guy for the young players, and Trotz may be super loyal to him and not fire him. And you may be totally right about all that. But at the end of the day, if you, the fans, stop showing up and the seats are empty, that's when things start to change. Because you kind of have to. You kind of have to make changes. So there you go. What's the trick-or-treating adult beverage of choice? Thank you, Josh, for saving the show with some positive conversation. Sinker stocks up this year between Titans and Preds. Positive. The trick-or-treating adult beverages, it generally it's just been beer, but I'm not drinking a ton of beer. I don't think we're gonna do the whole like mixed cocktail bar kind of cart thing, trunk or treat kind of deal. We do the wives are all big champagne drinkers during the walkabout town. So yeah, Josh, I'm with you. Brown water, and Josh lives a few streets over for me, so he'll be on the same. He'll be trick or treating in the same areas. So I don't know. What about you, Emma? When's the last time you went trick or treating?
The last time I went trick or treating, I was not old enough to enjoy adult beverages, so I can't really say, but I don't know.
And you've never done I'm taking like I guess you don't have any nieces or nephews or like friends' kids or anything like that. You don't have any friends with kids? Damn.
I do, but like I don't take them.
You're not going to hang out with them on Friday night?
I mean, this Halloween I will be at home because I will be covering Game 6 of the World Series.
Ooh,
that's now happening. So that's my Halloween plan. I may or may not be having. See, this is my problem. I was gonna say I may or may not be having an adult beverage while I do that, but now adult beverages just make me sleepy, and when I need to sit
you're getting
until
old.
the end of the game, I know.
You're getting old. Yeah, you have to have a cup of coffee before. You got to eat dinner. Have a little espresso after dinner, then you can go back to having an adult beverage. Mitch is all about the tequila. Easiest adult water on my system. Glad you asked. Make sure you check out the brand new single barrel Arret pick of tequila from Sinkers Beverages. Well done, Mitch. Thanks for setting me up there. That was released on Monday as a collaboration, so go check that out. That's the tequila. That's actually the tequila that I buy because it's such a great value, just like the liter. And like it's not like bad enough to be a handle, but it's not good enough to be like super expensive, like a $50 fifth or whatever. I want to say it's like $27 for like a liter, and it's a perfect one that you can sip on with ice, or you can make a mixed drink and not feel bad about it. Minka. So it's a good one, and they've got a single barrel pick now that they've got at the store. So go check that out. Right now, I do a little Uncle Nearest over ice. Talk about an interesting drama off the field. Uncle Nearest is having a fun time in the court system right now.
Well, yeah.
But they're very good. Very good.
Shout out Minka for her input on that question. Actually, shout out to Murphy, Minka's friend, who is also a dog, I should point out, who's also here and hasn't made a single noise in the last hour. So shout out to Murphy. Minka, maybe Minka needs some adult beverages. She was as we continue to deal with fire alarm testing in our building, she was drugged yesterday. She had a nice trazodone, had a nice trip yesterday, but now she's back to her normal ways.
Did you enjoy the second half of the game Sunday night?
Sunday night? Oh, no. I fell asleep. I fell asleep at the top of the 12th. So
no, I was talking about your Steelers and my Packers.
Oh, that no.
I thought for sure Aaron Rodgers was just gonna cook all night and like do the whole like my old team thing, and the second half happened, and I was very pleased. So
yeah, I can't say I was surprised by that whatsoever.
I just don't have the same. I'm curious because like I was looking at like, oh, Joe Quenneville's back in the building, and like all these you could have a Chicago interim head coach, and the Blackhawks are actually doing pretty good stuff right now, relatively speaking to their expectations. And I'm just thinking like, and there's, of course, we're not going to talk about it, but lots of Predators fans hate Ryan Kessler. Obvious reasons to not root for that guy now with the news that broke this week. And so what's interesting to me is the amount of, like, I don't really feel any animosity towards Aaron Rodgers. Like I kind of do with Favre, but I loved Favre more as a kid. But Favre is just an actually bad person. Rodgers is just like weird and kind of stupid. But like Favre is such a bad human being, even when he was the quarterback for the Packers, that I have no affinity for him at all. But Rodgers, I'm kind of like, I still think he's like the greatest quarterback that's ever lived. So I'm like, I don't mind. I don't mind you.
Well, and apparently, from all accounts, he has not been a diva or anything in the locker room since he arrived in Pittsburgh. Like the other guys like him. So
teammates have always liked him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, all right. So maybe he is just a little weird, a little stupid.
Just weird. But... Look, he wants to go sit in a yurt with a shaman and do ayahuasca. Like, have some fun. Like, go for it, man.
He wants to take his horse tranquilizers to fight off COVID. Go with God. But I just.
What, says Kevin? Aaron Rodgers is one of the great conservative thinkers of our time. I can't actually tell what you mean by that, Kevin. I think the moon landing was real, though. I'll just say that. I just think the moon landing was real. Where can everybody find you, Emma? We didn't even get to we'll study Utah and Chicago as the season goes along. San Jose, a lot of good Western Conference examples of what you can do with 5 really awful seasons of hockey. What else? What else you got going on in your content life that you can promote?
Still hosting the wraparound over at the Hockey News every Tuesday and Thursday, talking about the latest from around the hockey world. If you want to know what's going on in other places other than Nashville, both the good and the bad. Sometimes it's better to get out of the bubble a little bit, hear what else is going on around the league. So that's what I'm doing.
There you go. Thank you all for being so in tuned and fired up and active and engaged in the conversation. I do appreciate all of you guys. So whether it's Jeff and Kevin and Josh and Mitch and Lop and Nash Lana and all you folks, more to explore. I appreciate Logan. I appreciate all you guys for being a part of the show. It's the most fun part about it is interacting with all of you guys. The chat over at Lower Broad Hockey, just hang in there, guys. Drink some sinkers and eat some shotgun willies. You'll feel better, I promise. And that about does it for Untitled Film Project Podcast. Hi. You need a new intro. If you know, you know. Otherwise, have a great week, everybody. God bless you all. For Emma, I am Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.